Hey everyone, my name's Tomato Anus, also known as the reason why the big man stays upstairs, and this is a segmented any % speedrun of Mirror's Edge. This run is performed by Voetiem, the current world record holder for this category, who also helped me write the script to make sure it's all as accurate as possible. If you would like to watch either this segmented run without commentary, or Voetiem's current any % world record, which is also commentary free, there are links in the description below. Also, with this being any %, glitches are allowed. If you would prefer a run without glitches, I've linked the current glitchless world record by Rec in the description as well. Real quick, here's a rundown if you're unfamiliar with Mirror's Edge and how it's structured. You play as Faith, a postal worker who's great at parkour who lives in a utopian city. A popular public figure and friend of Faith's family is found doing a big sleep, and Faith and her sister Kate are framed. Over the span of 9 chapters, 11 if you count the tutorial and prologue, you try and get to your sister while avoiding being captured by a security corporation. The goal of this speedrun is to complete these chapters as fast as possible, utilizing any tools at our disposal. Now, this run comes sprinting out of the gate, with us immediately pausing to skip the training area. This then leads to the prologue, which begins with Voetiem immediately doing what appears to be using his leg as a helicopter blade to fly over city blocks. Now, this is a combination of several movement speed tech, but the most prominent and visible is what's called the kick glitch. If you perform a wall run and then kick, it creates a floor underneath us, which means that we can perform any action in midair that we normally can only perform on solid ground, including jumping. This floor only lasts for 1 frame though, so Voetiem has jump bound to his scroll wheel so he can consistently hit the jump after performing the kick glitch. Every time you perform a kick glitch, you gain a little bit of momentum, increasing your overall speed. When we sprint on the ground normally, we top out at a max velocity of around 26 kilometers per hour. You can go faster than that though, as long as you don't touch the ground. By chaining multiple kick glitches together, we continually benefit from the additional speed boost from each kick glitch, and it won't be brought back down to 26 kilometers per hour until we touch the ground next. Once we get outside, we need to make it to a rooftop where we're going to be greeted by a helicopter. Now, there's a lot going on here that can be explained, but one of the things that I personally find most interesting is something called wall boost. If you perform a wall run and then jump off as opposed to doing a kick glitch, you gain a bit of speed. However, you can gain more speed than normal if you look more into the wall when you jump off. That means that the closer to perpendicular that you look at the wall when you jump, the more speed you gain. Real quick, once we do our trust fall here towards the helicopter, we're now officially in chapter 1, titled Flight. Back to wall boosting, it lets us move over the intended 26 km per hour maximum running speed. Wall boosts, as with many other things, are hard to notice if you aren't super familiar with what you're looking at, and also because some of them are immediate. So next time Voetiem is about to do a wall boost, I'll put something up on the screen so you know when to look for it, and you'll then know what it looks like. So in this chapter, we're going to be making our way to meet up with our sister, where we'll unfortunately find the sleeping public figure. Along the way, we ride an elevator for a brief moment of respite where Voetiem displays this game's age due to its concern over a flu caused by birds, when nowadays I think we have a bit bigger of a problem to worry about. Also, after this elevator ride and at other times in the run, it may look like we're teleporting from one spot to another, but we're really just skipping cutscenes that relocate us to a different place than where we began. In a second, we're going to enter a hallway with all white walls, and the area we just left will have unloaded. Normally you're not supposed to be able to go back to where you just were, but Voetiem is pretty good at this game and is able to do some wall runs and jumps back to the old area, allowing us to now go out of bounds. We can then beeline to a big glass slide, skipping a small chunk of the level and saving about 13 to 14 seconds. Another piece of tech that I haven't explained yet but is super prominent is called a sidestep boost, which is a faster way to accelerate. Normally it takes 6 to 7 seconds to build up our full running speed, but jumping to the side puts you at max speed almost immediately. By jumping to the side or sidestepping and then turning to face the direction we need to go, we'll instantly be near max speed, skipping Faith's cosplay of a white sprinter at the Olympics. Changing topics, once we make it to the next indoor area, we're going to ride another elevator. If you're watching with captions on, you'll notice that the word ride was in quotes, and that's because I'm not sure if ride is the best word for it. In short, there's a glitch called Use Glitch that's activated by pressing the interact key twice on the same frame by using the scroll wheel. Voetiem does this as he slides into the elevator, which gives him about 1.5 seconds to do whatever he wants before the game puts him into an elevator state where he can only use WASD and pause. In this short time span, he does a backflip into the corner, which then zips him on top of the elevator, where we then stand menacingly as the elevator goes up. Once the elevator stops, Voetiem runs off and briefly pauses so the game has a moment to load, which allows for him to then jump after unpausing, which is a glitch called elevator bounce. We then land and roll on some invisible floors, and also perform a kick glitch real quick that's super precise between the wall we wall run on and an invisible wall. If we didn't perform this kick glitch, we'd hit a death barrier below us. In a moment, the acid is going to start kicking in, and we'll see trails of our arms, and Voetiem is going to hit a checkpoint while out of bounds in a red hallway. We then pull up the menu and manually load the checkpoint, which loads us into the checkpoint we just hit with the level fully loaded. We'll be hitting checkpoints and quit out loading at several points throughout the run. This will allow us to head to the exit of the chapter, and we'll run past and startle an LEO along the way once we get moving. After we make our way across this plaza area, Voetiem will make a daring leap over a highway and then squeak down a glass ramp before entering the chapter end trigger. We start Chapter 2, titled Jackknife, by immediately sidestep boosting and leaping a fence to head into a canal passage. There we do a series of wall boosts, kick glitches, and sidestep boosts, and actually end up out of bounds after we perform the kick glitch here when we get up onto the raised walkway. At one point after turning a corner, Voetiem will perform a series of wall boosts in a row to keep his movement speed high. After that is when we run along a walkway and jump onto and off of a railing to be able to climb and run on an invisible platform. We use this to cut a corner and drop onto a ledge that's still out of bounds. On this ledge, we do wall boosts off an invisible wall before we eventually reach an open out of bounds area that will kick glitch through to hit a checkpoint, after which we'll quit out and load. The checkpoint symbol will pop up when it seems Slenderman is getting close to us. Earlier I mentioned something called the use glitch, which in short allows us to interact with things while we're in another animation. Here we use the use glitch to interact with a gate control while we're in the air so that we don't have to climb all the way up to the platform to trigger it. Once the gate opens, we sidestep boost and run through the next room, performing wall boosts whenever possible. We then proceed to climb up this enormous room, utilizing the intended pathway of ascent most of the way to progress through the area. At times we do a wall climb followed by a sidestep, which lets us then wall run and take some shortcuts, but we'll explain that tech later in the run. Right now though, I want to take some time to explain something that's a movement fundamental in this speedrun that's used all throughout the run. Bunny hopping. Now this is a term that's pretty popular not only speedrunning but gaming as a whole. If you somehow have never heard this term, it's really popular in source games like Counter-Strike and Half-Life, and it's pretty much just jumping over and over to constantly build up speed without ever losing speed from the friction of the ground. Mirror's Edge has a similar mechanic where you gain about 4 km per hour of speed every time you jump. You lose the extra speed when you land, and you're not able to jump in quite as rapid succession as the source games, but you do gain speed for when you're in the air nonetheless. This is why throughout the run you'll see Voetiem jump a lot randomly. After we rode down that slip and slide and did the use glitch to open the emergency gate, we begin our ascent up a tall cylindrical area that's reminiscent of some movie about a bat. As we rise in the storm drain area, whenever we have to climb up a pole, Voetiem opts to wall run straight up first to skip as much of the pole shimmy as possible since shimmying, albeit seductive, is slow. Normally when climbing up, you have to use a valve to turn off the waterfall, which has collision to prevent you from jumping through it. Voetiem is able to climb above the waterfall though without turning it off, so its collision is still there for us to be able to run and jump off of, like we did right when we climbed up to jump to the crane controls, and also stand on and lay down on afterwards while we wait for the crane. Changing topics real quick, throughout the run we wanted to try and avoid opening doors normally. The typical barging animation is just really slow, and we have a really hard time accelerating quickly after it. Because Faith is a big fan of the album The Warrior's Code, we're instead going to drop kick doors most of the time to open them. This is because it's fast and lets us sidestep boost earlier than we would be able to normally. Right here though, we're just going to open the door with a mean right jab. We're then going to perform another elevator clip like we did earlier and ride the elevator up, dropping down into the hallway before the hallway has a chance to load. Normally when you exit to the rooftop here, the character Jackknife is waiting for us and starts running away immediately and we have to chase him, but it's a little different in the speedrun because of how we got here. After getting all up inside Jackknife for a moment, Voetiem begins the chase segment. If you listen closely, you can hear Jackknife also running around, but it might be hard to hear. Instead of following Jackknife, we're instead going to start kick glitching between buildings to get through the area quickly. Once we grab onto the ledge of a building, we'll then scoot over a bit before jumping over the fence. We're going to intentionally take damage from some barbed wire in a second because like when you kick glitch, the animation of getting damaged by barbed wire creates a floor underneath Faith which lets us jump while in midair. Once we enter the blue hallway in a second, we hit a checkpoint and Voetiem quits to the main menu and loads from the checkpoint because it puts us further down the hallway, skipping some running. We then ride an elevator like normal and we're going to immediately skip a cutscene that starts playing when we exit. After then getting a running start, we kick glitch to a nearby building and enter the end chapter trigger, bringing us to chapter 3, titled Heat. In Mirror's Edge, there's a hint button the player can use that points Faith and the camera in the direction of the objective. If you hold the hint key during an animation, the moment Faith finishes the animation and the player has control again, the camera will snap to face the direction of the hint. On an upcoming wall, we'll do a hint climb, which is wall climbing and jumping off of the wall but holding the hint key during the animation, so Faith will face the wall again and do a fast vault over the ledge. Here we also run around a fence real quick, seemingly walking over air with no floor, which is possible due to the game snapping us up to the ledge if we don't have enough height to clear the ledge, which is why we can just run around the fence. We're then going to perform a pretty sizable skip across this chapter. The first part of the skip requires us to climb up some canopies, which will bring us close enough to the ledge of the building that we can climb on up. Climbing up on top of the building puts us out of bounds. Once on top of the building, Voetiem then is going to perform a kick glitch and some wall boosts to propel himself way out into the city block, where we hit a checkpoint trigger in the air. Once the circle and arrow logo pops up in the lower left corner, we quit out and load the checkpoint to put us back in bounds. Loading back in, we get a bit of dialogue saying that our goal should be to work towards the big red cranes in the distance. As we make our way there, we get attacked by some bad guys in helicopters, but luckily we're so fast we can outrun their projectiles. Also, the fact we're weaving in and out of cover helps a bit too. At one point we perform a series of wall boosts, which honestly, watching a chain of them is one of the most satisfying things to watch in the run for me. Once we make it to the final building, we'll sidestep boost and perform a drop kick to enter the building quickly and boost our way on over to an elevator. We're actually going to hit a checkpoint during this elevator ride, so instead of waiting around and fully reading propaganda pieces on runners like Faith, Voetiem will quit out again and load from the checkpoint to skip the back end of the elevator ride. Once we get back outside, it's normally where we'll climb up the cranes and perform a huge daring leap across a big gap. Instead, we can build up a bunch of momentum and then kick glitch across the huge gap without ever having to climb the cranes. This is called a speedy kick glitch. What makes this kick glitch so speedy is that we hit the lip of the building, which gives us a lot of upward velocity for a moment, and wall run directly out of it, which converts the upward velocity to forward velocity. By then doing a precisely timed kick glitch, we maintain that momentum and can cross the gap. Crossing the gap itself isn't the trigger to continue the mission though, so we have to climb up on top of a crate real quick to hit the trigger. Us climbing on top of this crate absolutely stuns Mercury, the voice in our earpiece. As you can hear, he cannot believe that we had the gall to just climb on top of a crate like that.
Did I just do what I think you did? God damn it, girl, I just spilled my Joe all over the keyboard.
Hey, can you get a message to Miller? I need to see him again.
Sure.
This marks the end of chapter 3 and brings us to chapter 4, which is titled Rope Burn. Right at the start of the chapter, we wall climb and side hop onto the ledge of a door and then wall climb again, which lets us get on top of the building. From here we're going to start building up some speed and then perform a precisely timed and spaced kick glitch to let us soar over a barbed wire fence. There, we'll be next to a skylight which we can just slide into at a certain angle and we'll drop through the roof and go out of bounds. Voetiem will then pause buffer a little bit to get the game to load in, after which we'll hit a trigger to load the next area, but it won't be fully loaded since we sequence broke the chapter. Not to worry though, because we get back into a loaded area pretty quickly and make our way to the subway tracks. Here we do a bunch of wall boosts and shove our knee into a wall that looks like blue moon sand. We boost down to the entrance of a tunnel where we'll actually get jump scared by passing subway cars. Here we do a wall climb and jump off and do the hint key thing from earlier and get snapped up to the nearby ledge. After slowly sliding down the ear vent, we barge into the next room and perform a jump off a wall to vault onto the upper floor where we hit the emergency door override and make a beeline back towards the subway tracks, because having our light flash before our eyes just once wasn't enough for us. We then casually bunny hop down the subway tracks, paying no heed to the fact that realistically some subway cars could come at any moment, but Voetiem is super familiar with their schedule and knows that they aren't due anytime soon. After then leaping over the other subway track, Voetiem drops down to the floor below and slides through a crawlway and spooks a rat. We then wall run and jump up to a platform where we activate the ventilation emergency cutoff for aeration chambers 7 and 8. Once the ventilation systems in aeration chambers 7 and 8 come to a halt, we hop on through and prepare to fulfill my life goal of cosplaying as one of Tom Hanks' characters in the Polar Express. It's the hobo. I've always wanted to be the hobo in the Polar Express. There are actually things you can get hit by when you're on top of the train, so we have to be careful to avoid them to not take damage. Wait, Voetiem, what are you doing? No, stop. Dude. Okay, thankfully we've leapt to the other train where there are no more obstacles to avoid, and of course Voetiem does a backflop to take some more damage. At least we can just lay here and chill for the rest of the ride. Wait, are you serious? I guess we just have to sit here and wait as we watch large poles slam Faith in between the legs. The train finally starts hitting the brakes, meaning the end of the ride must be approaching, and Voetiem clearly just wants Faith to get hit between the legs with one last sign. Oh, never mind. That one was an actual strat to get caught on the sign and drop down next to the exit door. At the start of Chapter 5, titled New Eden, we get a quick running start and then perform a kick glitch off a nearby building to land on a super narrow invisible platform. This invisible platform is the width of the raised ledge of the building below us. After dropping down into the street where the security dudes notice what we've done, we run while taking fire and use the roof of a car as a springboard to clear a fence. This leads to us bursting through a series of 3 doors which will lead us to another elevator. The first interior section we have to go slow through, otherwise the elevator won't load. At this elevator, we're going to perform another elevator clip to get on top, but this elevator shaft actually leads straight to the roof, so we're able to just hop off the top of the elevator onto the roof early. We do have to wait a moment though for everything to load once we make it to the roof, but we take this moment to line ourselves up. Once everything loads in, we make a running leap across a street to some buildings where we're going to perform what's called an infinite wall climb. This is done by wall climbing and then side jumping. If you side jump while wall climbing, you're able to perform a little wall run on the same wall. Well, if you're wall running, you're then able to jump off of the wall, which then lets us wall climb up a different wall. On that wall we then climb and side jump, and then wall run and leap off to perform the process all over again. This lets us chain wall climbs infinitely between 2 nearby parallel walls, letting us get to the top of the building. Now, while we have time and Voetiem is tearing this chapter apart, I want to just go over 2 smaller, more subtle parts of the run real quick. The first is something called air steering. Now, this one is a bit of a common feature in games where you're able to leave the ground despite not really obeying real-world physics. In Mirror's Edge, if you're in the air and traveling one direction, you can very slightly steer while in air by looking in the desired direction and holding the forward key. Now, this doesn't work if you try to strafe with side directional keys. It only works if you're facing the direction you want to steer slightly towards. This is used a lot throughout the run, especially when we're doing kick glitches everywhere, and is used to try and place our landing in as optimal a location as possible. Before I get to the second smaller thing I want to explain, I have to quickly explain a major skip that happens later in the chapter called Mall Beamer, which I'll do a countdown to as it's about to happen. Earlier, I briefly talked about Speedy Kick Glitch where we hit the lip of a ledge and convert that upward momentum into forward momentum. For Mall Beamer, we wall climb and hit a lip protruding from a wall, which gives us momentum away from the wall, which when we turn around allows us to vault a railing, letting us skip a lot of the shopping mall later in the chapter. Back to the smaller subtle things. The second thing I want to explain real quick is called extended wall climb, which has already been used a lot throughout the run. So obviously you can only wall climb so high before Faith loses traction and upward momentum and starts to fall down. The height that Faith climbs changes based on whether or not you had a running start before the wall climb, or if you were stationary beforehand, with the former giving you just a bit more height than the latter. An extended wall climb makes it so that a stationary wall climb will have as much height as a wall climb where you had a running start. Wall climbs are usually triggered by running or jumping into a wall and holding the forward key. If you instead jump into the wall and then delay the pressing of your forward key just slightly, then you'll get a little bit of extra height on the wall climb. This comes in handy in 2 ways. First is that it lets us have more speed going into the vault or climb when we reach the top of the wall we're climbing up, even if we weren't able to have a running start to our wall climb. The second thing that an extended wall climb lets us do is that even if we aren't able to get a running start based on our surroundings, we can still reach higher up things that normally wouldn't be possible with a stationary wall climb. This will come in handy in a big way closer to the end of the run because we'll be doing a skip in the final chapter that is entirely dependent on the fact that we're able to extended wall climb to get up to a spot we aren't normally supposed to get up to with a stationary wall climb, but as I said earlier, extended wall climb is used a lot throughout the whole run. Back to what Voetiem's been up to, we just dropped down into what seems to be an ambush, but luckily Voetiem frequents the shopping center and has the directory memorized, so he knows that we can just climb to the upper level and use some walkways to completely avoid the baddies. We can then make a beeline to the chapter end, bringing us to chapter 6, titled Pirandello Kruger, but this is marred by the fact we don't get to hear who Faith's little friend is.
Looks like my little friend.
Near the start of chapter 6, we're going to be going out of bounds again, and things are going to get psychedelic with the graphics for a moment or two. First though, we're going to drop from one zipline to another, which honestly, just thinking about doing in real life makes my gut drop. We then jump to out of bounds and land/roll briefly on an invisible platform to reduce our fall height so we don't take damage. We're now out of bounds where walls are merely a suggestion, and as I alluded to earlier, this is where things start looking trippy again. A while ago I explained something called use glitch, where we press the interact key twice on the same frame, but something I neglected to mention is that it lets you interact with things through walls, as Voetiem does here to hit the switch for the conveyor belts through the wall. We then spring through the factory area and are going to be dropping an enormous distance in a second. To mitigate fall damage, Voetiem grabs a ledge halfway down the enormous drop so we don't completely murk ourselves when we land. We're then going to quickly hit another button through a wall and do a neutral kick when dropping into a hallway to avoid the landing animation. This brief hallway segment consists of a lot of wall boosts, which I love, and leads to another elevator that we ride up. While we have a second, hi, how are you? Let me know in the comments. I hope you're having a good day and staying safe. The world is crazy right now, but I hope you're doing alright both physically and mentally. Okay, back to the run. When the ride stops, we see two fools who are looking to square up. They're a bit too menacing for us though, so we immediately turn around and dip, trying to make our escape from the area. After climbing up the abstract art in the center of the room, we're going to bunny hop briefly on a walkway and then enter another elevator. At least this one has some light reading for us on. An anonymous poll that the city's police force doesn't like the results of. I'll let you all read it for yourself though. When we get to exiting the elevator, we'll proceed down a hallway where a couple windows will get broken for us to jump through, but the final window we have to do ourselves. Outside, Voetiem will then make a break for the end of the chapter, which is triggered by jumping on top of a moving train and riding it to the next chapter. This movement across the city consists of all the things we've talked about before, like kick glitching, wall boosts, bunny hopping, sidestep boosting, and more. On the zipline, we'll see the train approaching, and Voetiem will then trust fall onto it. Maybe because he too has a natural draw and trust towards trains like me, the hobo from the Polar Express. Faith then lounges on the roof of the train, talking with Mercury, seemingly not remembering what happened the last time we laid down on the roof of a train. This leads us to chapter 7, The Boat, which is the shortest chapter of the run because pretty much all of it is skipped. Our first goal to start this chapter is going to be to get out of bounds, hit a checkpoint trigger, and then quit out and load from the checkpoint as we've done before. To get out of bounds here, we have to kick glitch over this barbed wire fence, which actually is a pretty tight squeeze. Once out, we can then bunny hop through some cars and concrete barriers to the checkpoint trigger, which we hit after climbing over a barrier rather than running around it. Once we climb over the barrier and land by the floating storage tank, we have a moment to admire the nearby ship named the Gurkha 2 before the checkpoint is actually triggered. When we load back in, we'll be under fire from a masked figure who we have to take out. And we take them out in typical Voetiem fashion.
Careful, man.
After disarming the baseball ump, the chapter ends and we load into chapter 8 titled Kate. Huh, that rhymed. Not sure if that was intended. Anyways, let's check back in on the story of the game before the run is ended. There was that public figure I mentioned a while ago who took a big sleep, and our sister is being blamed, so she's in pretty deep. We found the miscreant though. They're the masked figure we just fought, but we still have to rescue Kate since she's already been caught. She's currently imprisoned in a SWAT convoy, but we know of a vantage point from where we can foil their ploy. First though, we have to traverse the city and go for an elevator ride, and Voetiem enjoys the music while he waits inside. Once we get back outside and into the sun, we continue to kick glitch and also wall run.
Locate that drop. I'll get on the creek. See if you can move.
We'll eventually climb up some scaffolding and swing around, after which Voetiem will then jump right out of bounds. This won't be a graceful landing though. It's so high our legs implode, but luckily we hit a checkpoint so we can just quit out and load. When we load back in, we're going to be in an atrium, but Voetiem will make it look like a gymnasium. It's an incredibly vertical section that should take a lot of time, but we can make quick work of it with a few infinite wall climbs. By the way, one common question about this run is how we can jump off of rails. Well, you can stand on anything for a few frames before our footing fails. Normally at the end of this area, we have to climb into a vent, but with some wall climbs and wall boosts, we can skip that segment. This skip is done by jumping out of bounds and then hitting and loading a checkpoint before we hit the ground. This brings us to where we snipe the van our sister is in, but normally we have to wait for the van to appear to begin. If instead we jump off this scaffold and expire, the van's hitbox will spawn and be subject to our fire. If we snipe this specific window, we'll somehow hit the spawned hitbox of the van, and then watch as Voetiem unleashes the Black Plague upon man.
Connors, convoy. What's your status? Over?
We also have no arms now after freeing our sister from her captor because Voetiem did a fun glitch that will last the rest of the chapter. With our position compromised, it's time to make a dash down the hall, and then drop down several stories doing our best to try and break our fall. After rolling a few times and reaching the ground floor, we'll exit the chapter through the revolving door. This marks the end of chapter 8 titled Kate, and leads into the final chapter, chapter 9, which is titled The Shard. Now, right near the start of this chapter is a moment where we have to turn a valve to let a hallway flood with combustible gas. This is because the pathway we're to take is locked and we need to huff and puff and blow the door down. We usually hide in a small crawl space during this, but Voetiem likes putting faith through the ringer, so instead we're going to just lie down directly underneath an open flame next to the door that'll get blown open. This door actually gets opened before the explosion ever happens, but we still take a lot of damage from the fire. Luckily, the bad guys outside are this universe's equivalent to stormtroopers, and we're able to just run right by them without getting hit. We then hop into an elevator and see an article detailing our feats from the previous chapter, but the door opens up before we really have time to read it and make snide comments about how the author decided to do this weird rhyming thing throughout the whole article. This leads us to an ambush where we're severely outnumbered by a ton of stormtroopers, but again, they're stormtroopers, so we really aren't in any imminent danger. We then hop into an elevator and clip to get on top of it, but we're going to walk off of it once it reaches the top. Once we walk off of it though, nothing will have loaded, so we have to pause buffer to wait for everything around us to load before we can go any further. Once everything does load in though, we walk forward just a little bit and hit a checkpoint, which we then quit out and load. Now remember a long time ago when I mentioned how an extended wall climb would come in handy in a big way closer to the end of the run? This will come in handy in a big way closer to the end of the run. Well, this is where it is, because we extended wall climb and sidestep to get on top of this security light, which lets us skip most of the level by just bunny hopping along this out of bounds ledge. We'll then drop off the ledge and neutral kick to not only avoid the landing animation, but to also open the door so we can head to the end of the chapter. We need to take an elevator that's down at the end of the hallway, so we do some quick maneuvering inside. Once we get to the elevator, we passionately press our hands against the door, but once the doors open, we perform the final elevator clip of the run. In typical dramatic fashion, this is also the longest elevator ride of the entire run. While riding this elevator up, we have an incredible view of the city all lit up blue. When the elevator eventually reaches the top, Voetiem will hop off and hit the checkpoint, then quit out and load to get everything to load in properly.
It looks like the security doors to the roof are closed. Okay. If you destroy join their service. Their emergency protocol should automatically...
This will bring us to another standoff with some stormtroopers, who actually land a singular shot in their enormous volley that they send our way. Here, we're going to wall climb and we'll be able to clip slightly out of bounds to climb into an adjacent hallway, skipping a bit of this indoor area. Right now, we're making our break for the roof where Jackknife, the guy who we saw A-posing a long time ago, is holding our sister captive. Once we exit to the roof though, we hit a checkpoint and immediately quit and load to skip a long cutscene. This puts us into a little final confrontation where Jackknife is in a helicopter with our sister, trying to get away, and we make our leaping backflop to grab onto the helicopter and kick him out of it. The run officially ends when we grab onto the helicopter. If you've made it to the end of the video, I'd like to say thank you on behalf of both myself and Voetiem. This run is really jam-packed and a lot went into making it by all parties involved. I'd also like to apologize for how long it took to come out. It's been over a month since my last video and is the longest I've gone without uploading since the tail end of 2018. Thank you for your patience, and also thank you to those of you who support the channel on Patreon. Patreon is easily the best way to support the channel, and if you throw in as little as $1 a month, you get early access to videos as well as updates on videos as they're being made. It's super unnecessary though, and I understand it's not in everyone's budget, especially with the current state of the world. That's all for this video though. Let me know your thoughts on it by either leaving a comment below, or joining my Discord server and leaving feedback in the video discussion channel, link is in the description. This was an any% speedrun of Mirror's Edge. I've been Tomato Anus, and I hope you have an above average day.